Okay, so Bez Hashem, we're going to start. We're what? A couple of days now away from Pesach. What is it? 10 days or so. So now is really the time to getting into the meat and potatoes, so to speak, of Pesach halachot. As we spoke last week, tonight we're going to focus on Kashering Kelim. Okay, so Kashering Kelim means we have vessels, utensils that are used for chametz. This is not only kashering only for chametz; it's also kashering from iser to heter, right? If there was a geisha used pots and pans, now you want to use it for kosher, you'd also do the same process of kashering. That's why if you take a look in the Shulchan Aruch, hilchos hechsher kelim are found in two spots in the Shulchan Aruch. You'll have it in Orach Chaim in Hilchos Pesach. Okay, so that's what Simonim in Orach Chaim, in Tafnin Aleph, Tafnin Bet, in Orach Chaim, as well as in Yoredeya, Simin Kuf Chaf Aleph. So it's twice in Shulchan Aruch, in Yoredeya and in Orach Chaim, just because in Orach Chaim it's going to be in Hilchos Pesach, and in Yoredeya it's Hilchos Isser v'Heter, that we're going to make a Keli that was Isser, you're going to make it to Heter. So when we're going to learn it tonight, we're going to really be going back and forth between Orach Chaim and Yeridea, just because the Hilchos are found in both places. And in fact, the Ramah says many times, go look back in Hilchos Pesach, and it'll go back and forth when you're learning them both. Okay, so the source of all of this. The source of all of this is actually a Mishnah of Avodah Zarah. The Mishnah of Avodah Zarah tells us that one who purchases utensils from a guy, okay, you have to prepare them first. If you have to wash them, you have to wash them. This also means it has to go to mikvah. All right, so if you get it from a guy, you also have to take it to the mikvah. The proper process is to do hechsher kelim first. First do the hagala or the libun, and then you take it to the mikvah. Okay. So firstly, if you have to wash, you wash them. If you have to, then the lashon is l'hig'il yig'il, l'levein ba'or yilaben ba'or. If you have to immerse it in a hot water, you immerse it in hot water, which is hagala, or you do libun and you do libun. So the Mishnah tells us there are different ways of kashering. So we know that the two main ways of kashering is what we're going to call libun. And libun is when you're destroying the isser or destroying the chametz. Okay, so this is, for example, Merenchai asked me about kashering a grill. Okay, so a grill and the rack for the grill, it's used directly with fire. Okay, it's a fire direct. There's no liquid medium in between. It's not like a pot. It's direct. So in order to kasher it, you have to kasher it with direct fire, and it has to get to a certain extent. We're going to see how high it has to get. We're going to see the today's price can say it's like 900 degrees Fahrenheit, 950 degrees Fahrenheit. It has to be that hot. But we'll see the lashon of the Gemara, see the lashon of the Rishonim, of what that means. And that's libun. Libun is different than hagala in the sense that libun destroys the chametz or destroys the isser. Taking a blowtorch, you're making it really hot, you're destroying it. Okay? Hagala, we're going to see, is different. Hagala is we're expelling the isser, we're expelling the chametz. We're removing the chametz or the isser from the pot through hagala. Hagala obviously is much less heat being used. Okay, and because of that difference, where in libun you're destroying the isser or destroying the chametz, and in hagala you're not destroying, but rather you're expelling. There will be practical differences of how you prepare for kashering kelim. Okay, let's just take a look. Sechtas Pesachim, Amr Yehuna Bereder Rabbi Yehoshua Eitz Parur Megailo Berotchin Uvekli Rishon Kasavar Kebalo Kach Polto. And this is another big yesod when it comes to kashering kelim. Kabbalah kachpolto means the way it came in, that's the way it comes out. Okay, so that's how you know how to remove the isser or the chametz. It's the same way you got it in the first place. This is the way you'll get it out now. You have to do it in a way that it came in. Kabbalah kachpol, the way that it gets absorbed, that's the way you emit the flavor too. Now, exactly how far does this go? We're going to see it's machloket poskim. Meaning, is Kabbalah kachpolto a Hagala thing? It's only something that's with Hagala, meaning if you use a direct fire that's a Kli Rishon, you have to get rid of it through Kli Rishon. And if it's Eroi, you get rid of it through Eroi. Or is Kabbalah Kachpolta also with Libun? Right? Because Libun, we're going to see, you have to have a certain amount of heat. Right? And this is going to come a big issue when it comes to kashering ovens. All right. So just keep that in your mind, because most of our ovens, if you don't have self-cleaning, if you have self-cleaning, it gets up to 950. That's going to be considered Libun Chomer. It's a real Libun. Our other ovens who don't have self-cleaning, you get up to 500. You're not sticking your oven into a hot water bath. You're not making hagal on it. So you're making some sort of libun, but how does it work? If libun is 950, so there is something called libun kal, but libun kal is going to have to work on this idea that Kabbalah kachpolta also works for libun, okay, which is not necessarily everyone agrees with. So we have the aside Kabbalah kachpolta. We'll have to see how far that goes. The next important thing that we know, the Gemara Maseches Avodah Zarah, where this is one of the Sharish Gemaras for Kashering Kelim. It says Alekech Kli Tashmish Min Ovdei Kachavim Devarim Shalon Ishtamish Behein Matvilin Behein Tahar. Okay, so if you take stuff that were not used, meaning wasn't used with fire, so all you have to do with them is wash them and then put them in the mikvah and you're good. Actually, that's just talk about mikvah. Stuff that never used, just put in the mikvah. Devarim Shalon Behen Ali date something that was used with cold, kigon kosot, like cups, kutniot, with silchoyot, and plates and stuff like that are only used with cold. You wash them and you put them in the mikvah and they're good. Okay? Because this all goes the way you used it. If you use it with cold, you don't have to do anything. If stuff that you use with hot, kigon hayoros, what you got to do is hagal on these stuff that are used with hot water, and then you put it into the mikvah. Again, always the process. If you're getting it from a guy, it's always kosher it first, and then you put it in the mikvah. If you're putting it in the mikvah first and then koshering it, you're gonna have to put it in the mikvah again. It doesn't work. It has to be in that process. It has to be hagala first, and then to put it into the mikvah. Are something you use with fire directly, like the spits and the grills. This you have to do libun on them, and then you put them in the mikvah, and they would become tahar. So this is when you're getting it from a guy, and that is the sharish of Kabbalah kachpolta. The way it came in, that's the way it comes out. So you have to look on what type of thing you're using. That would be why we pour the water onto the counters to kosher them, right? Because most of the times the counters are getting it through Eroi. Something spilled onto it. It's not the Kli Rishon, the counter. You don't need to boil up the counter or blowtorch the counter. You don't have to do that because that's the way it usually gets in. Now, what about if I use something sometimes this way and sometimes that way? Sometimes I use it directly on the fire. Sometimes I use a liquid in between. So what happens now? The Rashba says that we use it. We have to kasher it based on the primary way of usage. Okay, the way you primarily use it. However, the Bet Yosef brings another opinion and says, Bet Yosef brings a daya that you have to be concerned about the way it was sometimes used. Okay, so this is something known as Rov Tashmisho, is the way it's primarily used. Okay, so this, for example, would be, the Kiddush cup. Let's just use a Kiddush cup. Okay, so Kiddush cup is usually used with cold. Right? You put cold liquids inside. Or room temperature. It's not hot. They're not yatzoleded, both. They're not burning hot. So you would really, all you have to do for Pesach is to wash it out. You wash it out, and your Kiddush cup is good to go. All right. Now, sometimes maybe I had something hot drink in there. All right, some hot chametz drink. I don't know. I boiled up my. Okay, fine. Let's stay away from the washing dishes. That's another whole aspect. But let's say I boiled up my whiskey and I put it inside. I want that hot whiskey, hot sake. Okay, something like that. Yeah, you're right. But I just want to stay away from that example because it could be complicated. But let's say that I used a hot drink, a hot chametz drink. So do I have to be worried about that a hot chametz drink and now I have to do a gala on this cup or not? So according to the daya of the Rashba, you go Rov Tashmisho. The way you use it mostly is for cold. So you just wash it, even though you use it sometimes minority for something else. The Beit Yosef brings a daya that you have to be worried. We're going to see that Ashkenazim are actually concerned for minority usage on Pesach. That if sometimes you use it another way, they would say you have to kasher it the way that it got in through the minority usage. We, however, Sfaradim, are not worried about that. We go Rov Tashmisha, the way it was mostly used. And so says the Shulchan Aruch, Mechaber, in Hilchot Pesach. Kol Keli Holchem Bo Achar Rov Tashmisha. Everything goes according to the majority usage. Therefore, Ka'arot, such as Apapishal Pamim Mishtam Shemim Behem Bekli Rishon Ala Eish, Kigarim Shirov Tashmisha, Hu Be'iroi, since most of the time is used with Iroi, Shamarei Aleim Bekeli Rishon, and this is the way you kasher it also. So Ka'arot here he's saying it's pots with regard to pots. Okay, plates. He says it's something that you would use mostly with the irui, sometime as a kli rishon, since most of the time you use it with pouring from a kli rishon from the primary pot. So therefore, you only have to kasher it through irui. Now, you could always kasher it a level above. You want to throw it into the pot, kasher that's fine, but you could technically kasher it with the lower level with pouring from the hot water pot. Okay. Here I brought down to mention from the Alka Joseph Pesach edition on page 155. So halacha 2, in the middle of the halacha, right after the first set of brackets, with every utensil, the rule is that the method of purging is determined by seeing how the utensil is usually used. Therefore, if the utensil is used with the liquid, the majority of the time, it can be purged for the process of agala, even though it sometimes have been absorbed flavor comments through heat without any liquid. If the utensil is used without any liquid, however, it can be purged only through the stronger process of libun. So, Rov Tashmisho. The second halach he brings down, number 3, which is really interesting. If a utensil is used usually without any chametz, so I never use this utensil for chametz, ever. But one time it had been used with chametz. That utensil needs to be purged if it is to be used for Pesach. So you cannot say Rov Tashmisho is never to use it for chametz. Now you can't do that. You have to actually kasher. In this instance, we do not take the majority of the utensils used into consideration. Therefore, someone has a samovar that uses all your heat water, but someone heated pastries on top of it once or twice during the year. The samovar cannot be used on Pesach unless it was kasher. Likewise, if you have a knife that's normally used to cut vegetables, and one time you use it to cut hot cake, pizza, or hot breaded chicken, or was dipped into a boiling wheat cereal, you have to kasher the knife. So Rov Tashmisho means in its way used with fire, okay? Not its way used with chametz or not chametz, okay? So that's an important distinction. Okay, you cannot say, oh, most of the year I never use this with chametz, so I don't have to kasher it. No, you're gonna have to kasher it. If once it was used with chametz, it has to get kasher. Okay, the Ramah in Tufnun Aleph Sivav, he writes, "Yesh machmirin." There are those who are machmir like il hakarot bekeli. That's the meaning of the Ashkenaz. Maybe they're using the kli rishon to go and top us with chedoymel lezev. Yesh machmirin lahagil cold keli. Even if you use it with cold, because sometimes you might have used hot in it. So he says, even cups, even stuff that usually used for cold. So therefore, they'll take their kiddush cup and they'll put it into agala, and they'll put it into the hot water because that's what the Ramah says to be to be concerned, choishish, for the sometime usage, the minority usage, it may have been used with hot, and therefore you have to go and you have to put it into the hagala. Say what? No. We're just starting the shirish of the halacha of building up where we're coming from. Next thing he says over here. So we talked about the Kiddush cups. What I also wanted to mention before we move on is that the truth is everything that we're doing with Hagalos Kelim, or most of the time, is really Exer D'Rabbanan. Okay, this whole idea that we have to get rid of the chametz in the pots and the pans. Why are we saying it's D'Rabbanan all this? Because we know that there's something called the Ben Yomo and something called Eino Ben Yomo, and something that's called Tam Lifgam, right? Nice and Tam Lifgam. And we know that after 24 hours, all the bliot, all the taste and flavor that's in the pot is considered Lifgam. It gives a bad taste. And if it gives a bad taste, it really there's no chash in it. We're not worried about it, right? There's from the Torah, there's no isser. From the Torah, there's no isser of that flavor that's in the pot once it's 24 hours later. Okay, what we're doing is the Rabbanan that we're worried, because if you're going to let him get away with a pot that's a ben yom, it's already past 24 hours, he might not remember which pot's what, and he might come to use a pot that's within 24 hours, and therefore we have all this extra kelim that we have to do. You have to do. Okay, you cannot say, "Oh, it's been past 24 hours." Now you have to do extra kelim. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you're talking like the percolator, like over here, the urn, not the urn.
Put hot water behind the bucket, hot water, whatever water is boiled, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Then you put the.
So if it's never used for chametz, you don't have the kasher. You just wash it and you're good.
Well, coffee is not Pesach.
So if the coffee is chametz, then you have to kasher it. I don't know.
Maybe flavor or something.
The question is it glass? Not glass.
The Keurig machine, maybe. That's what you have. Yeah, something like that.
When they say decaf coffee, they might use chametz in the process of making it decaf.
Yeah, I don't know.
Just wash it. I can't put hot water. It's going to all ruin.
If it needs to be kosher and you can't kosher, then you can't use it. You have to figure out if it needs to be kosher. Okay.
If the coffee is Pesach,
Yeah.
no point of kosher.
Right, you have to put it away.
If it is kosher Pesach, we don't need kosher.
Right.
Done.
If what you use is kosher Pesach, then you're good. If it's not kosher Pesach stuff, so then you can't use it. If there's no way to kosher it, then you can't use it. Okay. So far we started. We gave the shirish of the halacha. We explained it. We talked a little about libun. We talked a little about hagala. We talked about Rav Tashmisho. Now we're going to move into libun. Okay, so libun we said is where we're destroying the isser or destroying the chametz. Okay, so big difference between kashering with libun and kashering with hagala is that libun needs no preparation. Okay, libun you don't need to prepare the keli. In hagala we're going to see you're going to need to leave the keli not used for 24 hours. You're going to have to scrub it down, make sure there's no dirt on it, make sure there's no residuals on it. You have to get rid of everything and then you wait 24 hours and then you do hagala. With libun, no, you can technically grill isser on the grill, take it and blowtorch it to 950 degrees until it gets to the status of libun, and you can go ahead and use it for heter right after. Okay, libun, because libun destroys the isser, destroys the chametz. How much and what do you need for it to be in order to be called libun? So the Yerushalmi says libun must have sparks. Shihu nitzatzot v'netazin mimena. Has to have sparks that comes out of it. Okay, so it gets so hot that sparks emit. That's what the Yerushalmi says. Okay, our Gemara in the Bavli Masechta says how much is libun? So Ramani says they shed their outer layer. The outer layer of the pot gets shed off, comes off. Okay, this is the two definitions that we have in Yerushalmi and in the Bavli of what it means, libun. Okay. Here in the Bet Yosef, he brings down both, and he says they're not arguing, and it's both the same opinion. Sparks and shedding its layer is the exact same thing. Now, here comes the libun kal. The libun kal is brought by a Rishon, the Hagaot Ma'amoniot, and he writes that someone says if you do libun, it says in the name, Tati b'shem Rabbi Victor Katz, right? Kohen Tzedek, Zeichel Uvracha. He says that if you make it hot, that if you put straw next to it, the straw will get burned. That's enough to be considered libun. Okay, that's not 950 degrees. That's the much lesser degrees. Okay, but it's hot enough that if you put straw, it's going to it's going to burn. Okay, that's not 950. It'll get burned, right? So he said that's enough. Now here, the Mordechai on this, another Rishon says, whoa, that really depends when that would be enough, right? And this comes into another yesod that comes playing into Hechsher Kelim, which is Heterbala Isserbala. It depends how and what came in. Okay, so he says over here that the kivan the heterabala im kain dilahem ba'agala really. So therefore, libun gal will be okay. That's what the Mordechai says. The Mordechai says that this form of lesser libun, all right, this lighter form of libun, where it's hot enough that if you put straw or something next to it, it's going to catch onto fire, is only good if it is heterbala. So now we have to explain what heterbala and isserbala is. So to explain, very, very simple. This comes from a Gemara in Mesechtas Avodah Zarah. The Gemara that says if you buy the spits, right? The how do you say the skewers? Okay, sikh in Bukhari, right? You buy the sikh and you're going to get it from a guy. It says you have to do libun on them. That's what the Gemara Avodah Zarah says, which makes sense because I use it with direct heat, so I have to kasher it with direct heat. I have to kasher it with libun. And then the Gemara in Zvachim says, no. Gemara in Zvachim says that when you use the meat that you use with the carbon, and then the meat stays on it, and the meat becomes usher through noiser, becomes left over, and the meat becomes usher, right? Now the spit becomes usher because it has noiser flavor on it. It has the blios of noiser on it. It says you kasher it through Hagala. The Gemara says, which one is it? You told me that skewers need to be kasher, metal skewers need to be kasher through libun, and now you're telling me metal skewers can be kasher through Hagala. So the Gemara makes a distinction, and the Gemara says it depends. When the guy used it, it came in, it was usher right away. That the blios was usher. The flavor was usher from the beginning. It was treifa meat. It was forbidden meat. The isser came into the skewer. So to remove isser, you have to use libun chomer. You have to burn it out. But here by the carbon, the flavor came in when you're using the heat. When the flavor came in, when did it come in? It came in beheter. It was allowed. You're allowed to eat that carbon meat. It's only after time that you're not allowed to eat it. Now it becomes aser. So since it was heterbala, it came in permissibly. Therefore, all that you need is hagala or libun kal, right? You don't need that big form of libun. Now, how does this apply to Pesach? Chametz the whole year is heter. It's mutter. So is chametz considered heterbala? Well, that'll make life a lot easier. Then you just need libun kal and everything. You just do hagala and everything technically. Or is chametz considered isser bale, and it's isser, even though the whole year you're allowed to eat it, but is it considered coming in as isser?
Isn't the fire doesn't touch directly the stick, touch the meat?
Doesn't make a difference. There's no liquid in there. Once there's no liquid, it's considered direct. The liquid is what causes it not to be direct. If there's no liquid, it's considered direct. So now the question is, what is chametz considered? Is chametz considered isur bale? Is chametz considered heter bale? So the Shulchan Aruch goes with the Rif and says that chametz is considered isur bale. It's considered that it comes in through isur. And therefore, when you have to do libun, you're going to have to do the real libun. Okay? The Rebbeinu Tam and others want to say, no, it's heter bale. And therefore, all you need is hagala for Pesach. You wouldn't need any libun. But that's not the way the Shulchan Aruch passes. Yeah? On the skewers? So then you'll have to get new skewers. You can't kasher them.
Why
good story.
Or they're gonna melt. Right. Or
You tried it already?
Black, but dark. Black, so it's not.
So then you can't use it. You have to get something else. Okay. So now that explains isur bale, heter bale. That's something important to know, because if something came in beheter, right? So if, for example, you're like switching from a pot or something, like say you want to switch it from dairy to meat, from meat to dairy, and it came in beheter, right? Not talking about any chametz issues right now. Technically, it's heter bale. You'll be able to get away with libun kal, right? You need to to get away with libun kal. All right, so this is libun kal, libun chomer, heter bale, isur bale. Let's take a look at the Shulchan Aruch. Shulchan Aruch in Orach Chaim, Hilchos Pesach, Sif Dalet says, Kelim shemishtamshim behem al yidei ha'or, something that you use with a fire, kigayin shvudim, v'askalot, v'chiyotzuhem, tzrichem libun. You need libun, because he holds that chametz is isur bale. V'alibun hu ad shiyu nitzatzot, nitzazin mehem, as long as sparks come out from them. And says the Ramah, v'yesh makilin, and there are those who are lenient. Im nitalavin kol kach, as long as it comes hot, shikash, that the straw nisarv alav b'chutz, that you put straw to it, it'll become on fire. There are some who are lenient. But he says, but we should go according to what the Shulchan Aruch said, which is to use libun chomer. So you do see that the Ramah does bring down the opinion, the leniency opinion, okay? That you could use libun kal. But Shulchan Aruch, so for us Sfaradim, we don't have that leniency of libun kal really for Pesach. So how do we kasher our ovens? Okay, we have to deal with that shortly. But let's continue. Now the Mishnah Berurah says, what's the reason of the Ramah saying that you're allowed to use a lesser libun? Because it's heter bale, the opinion of the heter bale. Okay. So now at this point, I said, let's look inside the Yalkut Yosef English edition of Pesach, page 156, halacha 4. Interestingly enough, the second paragraph in halacha 4. If someone purged these utensils, the metal spits and the grates, right, the stuff that they use for the grill, through the process, the mangal, right, the process of agala, and then cook with them, the food may be eaten on Pesach. This is so even if the food was cooked less than 24 hours after the time the utensils was cooked to chametz. Since it was already done, we rely on those poskim who rule that chametz that was absorbed for Pesach is considered heter, and therefore it was enough. If the food was cooked more than 24 hours after chametz flavor was absorbed, the food may eat it, even if we take into the account those poskim who rule the notes in Tam Lifgam of the flavor chametz of the flavor of chametz is forbidden on Pesach. So here the Yalkut Yosef says we could bidi avad in cases we could go with libun kal. We could go with heter. We could consider chametz heter bale bidi avad after the fact, which is a big kula. Okay, which is a big kula. So after the fact, someone
damage is done.
Right, damage is already done, but he kashed it through libun kal, through agala, and now it's already done. Food's already made, stuff like that. But the we can go with that opinion of heter both. Okay, fine. Now, okay, we'll do these two next pieces and then we'll go into the ovens. The ovens is another whole issue. Okay, so we already spoke about Kabbalah Kachpolta, which means the way it comes in, that's the way it comes out. Says the Piskei Tshuvot, this Kabbalah Kachpolto, he says, Loi Nemar Elo Bahagala. It's only said Bahagala, that the way it's used, that's the way it comes out. Ava Belibon Loi Niskar Klal. It was never mentioned by Libon. Meaning, I cannot say that something that I use without a liquid. So I'm using this, this thing on the fire, and it's only 600 degrees. Nowhere does it say you can take it out with 600 degrees. No. Once you need libun, you need to use it until sparks fly out, until the layer sheds. The Kabbalah Kachpolto was only said by Hagala. If you use it directly in the pot, then it has to be directly done. If you did it through pouring, if it came in through pouring, you can do it through pouring. It came in through cliche, you can do it through cliche. That's where it goes, depending on how it's used. Not by libun. But then he says, Yosh Paiskim. No, but there are all of those who disagree and say even by libun, if it came in through 400 degrees, you can take it out through 400 degrees. It all depends on how it's used, even by libun. But then he writes, but you should not be makel like this shita, unless you have other reasons to be makel. So this is something big in halacha. When you're learning halacha, what's known as a tziruf, you have different combinations of leniencies. There's more than one reason to be lenient, so then we can go with a lenient opinion. And it's not that simple. You can't just make your own tzirufim. You have to know which tzirufim could add together and when it could be. I was once listening to Rav Reisman. He was giving a halacha shiur, and he was saying that when he was learning about how to add tzirufim, he went to different poskim to see how they paskin and how they use tzirufim, because he said, I used to think you just could take any leniency that's out there and like in das yochad, leniency here, leniency there, and you make a tziruf. That's not the way it works. You have to know how to look at the tziruf. But if you do have other things you can combine, because it doesn't, the poskim don't seem to be this way to say Kabbalah Kachpolta works by libun. So there is a shita like that, but it seems you should not be going that way. Again, think about our ovens, because we'll talk about how we kasher ovens, not libun chamer, it's not hagala. What exactly are we doing, and how can we allow that? All right. Now, what about stuff you can't kasher because it's going to get ruined? That's your question, right? You have stuff that you can't kasher. What am I going to do? I need it. No, you can't use it. How you get to 900? We'll talk about it. We'll talk about it. There's for the oven, there is a way. We'll talk about it. Yesh misha amar the chapota osiot mikeren, stuff that are made out of a horn. Ein lehem takana b'hagala. You can't do hagala again. Kivan shemit kalalim b'mayim chamim. They get ruined in the mayim chamim. Hashin dilma chayasaleo. You guy's not going to make a real kashering in it because he's worried it's going to get ruined. So anything that's getting ruined, you can't kasher. It says the Igrot Moshe Feinstein says the same thing with any porcelain that has a layer out of it or something like that. Since the coating becomes ruined, you can't do it. Here he writes about, Penina Halacha writes about in Eretz Yisrael, they have something called a wonder pot. Sirei Pella. He says the same thing. You can't kasher them because when you have to kasher them, they're going to get ruined. Baking trays used in home ovens also get ruined when leaving chamer. You can't use them. You can't kasher them. So there are going to be items that you can't kasher. You're just going to have to. So then you can't kasher them. Simple as that. You have to get replacements. Okay. So now up until here, we've understood libun to a certain degree. Now we have to understand how we kasher our ovens. Okay. So what's going on in the oven? First of all, you can't really do hagala on an oven. How are you going to put it in hot water? It's like it's not possible. Second, hagala may not even work because an oven seemingly absorbs flavor without without liquid. So if anything, you would require libun, right? And libun, if you need libun, you're gonna have to do libun chamer. You have to make it to sparks fly out, to something sheds off it, right? That's what we said. Here he brings from Heschel Schachter that says the general practice is 950 degrees to be considered libun. Now, self-cleaning ovens do go that high. Self-cleaning ovens do go up to 950, and there's considered a libun chamer, and that's great. It becomes 950 degrees. I don't know what happens to the material inside, but it does become that high. However, most of our ovens, the conventional ovens that we have, and that do not have self-clean, the highest you can get it to go is 550. Good, everyone played with it already. So 550. That's the highest you can get it to go. So what do? So back in the day, they didn't have self-cleaning oven, and they went to Moshe Feinstein, and they asked Moshe Feinstein, what should you do? So Moshe Feinstein says, you have to do libun with a blowtorch for 7 minutes on an area no longer than 8 square inches at a time. Listen to Moshe. A blowtorch that gives 950 degrees of fire. It has to be to 950 degrees. And that's fine, whatever you can use.
Red Moshe, I have a question.
Yeah.
What I don't understand about the ovens, everything inside is very literally burnt, non-edible. Why do I have to burn it to that
You're right. We
extent?
already talked about that. Even though it's not edible, the Chachamim said we still have to kasher it. Even though
So
there's no more tam, there's no flavor, nothing can go in, but we still have to kasher it. So now how do you kasher? So Moshe Feinstein says you take a blowtorch, 8 square inches at a time. So you're gonna be practically in your oven about 5 hours if you're gonna, maybe even more. And you have to hold it for 7 minutes in one spot. And it's very dangerous. I think I remember one time that my father did it with a blowtorch. Okay. I think in that year we were holding a Moshe Feinstein sheet. After that, we switched over sheetas. It was Jose in that? I don't know. They're not bringing it down here. So that's the way Moshe Feinstein says. So since it's very hard for people, what do? A holder of Moshe Feinstein, this shita, they clean their oven and then they put a box. They insert some sort of box into their oven. Okay, so it covers the walls, so no chametz from the oven walls can go into the food. However, there's a lenient opinion, and this is the opinion. Now, what's Rav Moshe's idea here? Rav Moshe's idea is there is no kabbalah kachpoltai by libun. If he needs libun chamer, because you never use your oven at 950. You're using it, 350, 450? No, I don't even use it at 550. I never see people use it at 550. So, but there's no kabbalah kachpoltai by libun. You have to do libun, you have to do it completely. That's what Moshe finds. Comes Rav Aaron Kotler, and it comes to Yoshe Bir Soloveitchik, and they say, no, you put it to the highest fire, right? And you leave it on for an hour or two. What's their reasoning? All right, Kabbalah Kafalta, the way it went in, that's the way it's going to come out. It'll by libun. Since you only used it 450, a little bit more higher, it's going to make sure it comes out. So you put it at 550, the highest it can go. You leave it for an hour or two. You have Kabbalah Kachpalto. You're good to go. And a lot of people hold of this. Rav Moshe Feinstein says, no, there's no Kabbalah Kachpalto. You need to have real libun. So now, what about us? What's Chamawadia hold of this? So this is a Chuvat Yechavedat. He writes over here. He says, I'm going to add on. She's making out a tziruf, right? Because if you have a tziruf, you can use this Kabbalah Kachpolta by libun, right? So he's now going to add on an idea. He says that, what did we have? That if something comes in heter bala, right, then you don't need libun chum. So you have two things here going on. You have the possibility that Kabbalah Kach Palto works by libun. The way it comes in, the way it comes out works by libun. And you have the second thing that maybe chametz is heter bala. And if it's heter bole, it doesn't need liban chamer. So that's Rav Avadia's tzira. That's his two leniencies that he puts together. And as such, one may kasher an oven by running it on its highest setting. Okay, that is how we kasher our ovens. So what do? We use the easy off. We clean it out, get everything out. We don't use it for 24 hours. And then we turn it on for the highest setting and for an hour or two. And what we're doing we're basing two things. We're basing it that now we're saying chametz is heter bole, right? All the Shulchan Aruch usually says it's isser bole. And we're saying that it is kabbalah kach polto. The way it comes in is the way it comes out. What? So we clean it good. We clean it good, just in case.
It's never 100% perfect.
Right, and just in case, right? Just in case we clean it out well and everything, and we do it. And that's how we kasher our, based on these two principles.
We don't have soap.
But if we don't have self-cleaning. So I know my famous story with the self-cleaning, right? So when I bought the house, I said, I'm going to make sure to get a self-cleaning oven. So I was sitting late at night and I was shopping online for the self-cleaning oven. So I saw different prices and I saw one for a cheaper price and I saw it said cleaning on it. So I bought it. I get it home and it says steam cleaning. It doesn't say self-cleaning. It's steam cleaning. It does nothing. Absolutely nothing. It doesn't even get up to anything high. So I'm stuck with my steam cleaning oven, and now I have to still do it the old school style. So, but next time I'll make sure to read it, to make sure I read it right. That it says self-cleaning. But Azoi is. So that is how we kasher our ovens. So these principles of kabbalah kach poltoi, and the principle that maybe chametz could be considered heter bole. Okay, fine. So if you want to take a look in the Al Yosef English edition on page 443, Malkiel, this is the attachment that you send. If you have it, the original page is 443. You have oven self-cleaning. So what does he say? Here he writes 900 degrees, although I said 950. Here in the Al Yosef, he says 900 degrees. There is no need to clean the inside of the oven, but one must clean the outer surfaces. The oven must be left unused 24 hours and then put on a self-cleaning cycle. I don't know why he has to wait 24 hours. If it's leaving chamer, it should be good already. Okay, he wants you to wait. And then it's ready for use. Now, if you have a oven, gas or electric, so now you don't have leaving chamer there. All the inside surface of the oven must be cleansed as thoroughly as possible. After leaving the oven unused for 24 hours, it should be turned on to its highest heat and left to burn for an hour or more. Okay, and then he writes, those who purchase an oven, especially for Pesach, will receive a special bracha from heaven. But this is the idea. Okay, this is how we get to kashering our oven. Now, I'm following the order of the Tzurba here in volume 5, Hilchos Kelim. But if you want to take a look, so I'm just going to skip this part. But this is another Isser Bala Heter Bale. Take a look at the Al Yosef English edition, page 164, halacha 28. So he says here, frying pan. He says a frying pan can be kashered for Pesach through Hagala. The frying pan can be kashered through Hagala. Yeah, the frying pan, what's the problem with the frying pan? There's no real roitiv there. There's no real liquid there. You're putting about a minimum amount of oil. There's no real roitiv. It should be considered libun. And if it's considered libun, it should need libun chamer. And the Shulchan Aruch says you can do Hagala on a frying pan. So is it an Isser Bala or a Heter Bala? Which one is it? Same issue again. So if you look in the footnote in 72, he writes, right, all regarding chametz on Pesach, it's enough to do Hagala when you do it for Isser. The frying pan was used by a guy, you would have to do libun. This ruling needs to be explained because Shulchan Aruch already said when you have spits and grates that are used for Pesach, you have to do libun because we consider we consider chametz to be Isser Bale, so you have to do libun chamer. If it was just considered Heter Bale, then you wouldn't need to do libun on those stuff. So why did Shulchan Aruch say by a frying pan that was used with chametz that it's enough to do Hagala? So is it Isser Bala? Is there Heter Bala? So here he brings from the Gaon Rebbe Eliyahu of Vilna that really the ruling of Shulchan Aruch is based on the opinion of Rabbeinu Asher, who ruled that a frying pan can always be used through Hagala, since there's usually roitiv there. There's usually liquid there. The Rosh says that that liquid is considered liquid enough. So therefore, since you have this two things here, you have a roitiv, you have a liquid, and you have a possibility of the chametz being heter bale. So that's why Shulchan Aruch says you can use Hagala. So again, it's like a tziruf here for the frying pan. And you have for the oven, now you have it for the frying pan. So you have this ability to do the frying pan through Hagala. Okay, so that's again another issue of a heter bale. So if you go through this in depth, everything that keeps all these moving parts keep coming up.
Absorb.
Right. What do you mean it's all absorbed?
After 20 minutes, your frying pan is all black.
It's if you can't clean it to do Hagala, then you can't do Hagala on it. If you can't clean it enough,
Frying pan.
yes.
Frying pan meaning fried there.
I hear you.
It's inside.
You're right. When we're saying you can kasher it, meaning that if it's cleaned enough that it can be kashered,
They're not gonna help you fry it.
if you can't, okay. These are the ways to kasher. If it can't be kashered this way, then it's not kasher. So if you have a frying pan, here's an example. Okay, Kim it up. Bring it out. Okay, so this may not be a problem, these things. Okay, because these are not.
No, this is a good example, Brocho, which is very clean.
No,
Yeah.
use
No, this is a very
barkeeper's
clean
friend.
consider.
Use
But
bar.
most of the time it's
See
very
this?
darker.
We're going to see in Hagala, you have to actually clean this all off.
Barkeeper's friend. It's
Yeah.
like a mild acid, and you put it, and you scrub it
And you
on,
scrub it off.
comes out. If you leave it on for a few minutes, it will come off.
Right. So these,
You have to.
depending how good you clean this, if it's discolored, but there's no residual there, there's nothing, no substance, no mamoshus here, then it's okay. You can do Hagala, even if it's discolored. Yeah, if it's just a stain. The issue is there's mamoshus there, you can't get out the actual substance. Then you can't do Hagala on it. Okay, this. So if you, this has substance here. If you can't get this out, you can't do Hagala on it.
This is good.
This looks good. I mean, it's flat. It feels like it's part of it. I don't see it being a mamoshus there. Then you can have it. There's no substance.
Much-
so you can put it in.
Much less stressful to just buy a new one.
Yes, very much so. It's
All that
possibly
work
today-
time is money.
Possibly today, buying the pots and pans for Pesach will probably be the cheapest thing you'll buy for Pesach. Right? Between the matzahs and all the other food, you're spending thousands of dollars. Pots and pans you probably get for $100, $200, new ones, good ones. Okay, but let's start Hagala. That's why they're online. Okay, starting Hagala. So we just talked about you have to scrub it well. Where do we know this from? So the Rosh and says over here, you have to scrub it very well. Make sure there's no substance on it, because the pasuk says with tiny bisafri, it says ach et hazahav vet hakesev. You have to ach et hazahav. Just the gold and silver you have to do kashering on, not on the mamoshus on it, not on the substances on it. That again is a big difference between libun and between Hagala. On libun, you can leave the substance on it and you burn it off, and it destroys it. By Hagala, you're expelling the flavors in it. In order to do that, you have to get rid of the mamoshus first. You have to get rid of the actual substance on it. Okay, so that's the Rush. Shulchan Aruch says it again as well. The Kaidim Hagala tzarich l'shufam yafa. You have to clean it very well. This is with a knife sharpener, a millstone. We're talking about knives here, and remove all the rust. And if you did Hagala when it still had something on it, your Hagala doesn't help. Ain't moil loy Hagala. Hagala doesn't work on it. And if you have holes and crevices and there's substances in there and you can't get it out by cleaning, then you're gonna have to do libun in those parts. You're gonna have to destroy it through libun, and then you can do Hagala on the rest of it. But if it has mamoshus on it, you can't you can't kosher it. Okay, that's like I was saying. These are the way you can kosher things. But if your thing is unable to be kosher because of whatever other factor, then you can't kosher it. And then you're gonna have to not be able to kosher it. Okay. So the Mishnah Berurah says, if it's a rust, but there's no substance on it, that's what we were saying. Of aim bechulda mamoshes klal rak mare belvad is just a visual stain. Commotion into the palm sheyesh shchuros or adamimos the tzad pnim shel keli ain't faded. Then you have nothing to worry about. It's just a stain on it, just a mark on it. That's fine. The issue, if there is a substance on it, if there's mamoshes on it, then you can't do hagala on that. And again, says the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch over here. He says that if one performs hagala without cleaning it, it is not effective even b'diavad. You did nothing. You did absolutely nothing. The person didn't clean his kelim well, and he did hagala on the kelim. He did nothing.
Wasting his time.
Wasted his time. You have to make sure to clean it well. Okay, that's number one when it comes to hagala. So that's the first thing you got to do, is prepare the keli by cleaning it well. Now, the second thing we're going to request people to do before they do hagala is that they need to wait 24 hours. Okay, what's the reason? What's the reason to do that? The issue is as follows. If I didn't wait 24 hours, okay, I didn't wait 24 hours. So here's my keli. I just use this for chametz. I just use this for whatever. And now I'm going to go and put into the hot water. What happens? The chametz comes out, right? Now where does the chametz go? And then what happens with the water? Where does it go back? Okay, let's say I'm able to pull this out so fast and not go back in. And now I put in the next pot. What happens to my next pot? The chametz is going back in there because it's active. It's the blias that are active. They're still within 24 hours. Unless you have a huge pot that all the chametz you're going to put in is going to be batel v'shishim, right? It means you have to have enough water against all the walls of all the pots in order to do that. So therefore, what do we do? So what do we say? Wait 24 hours. Because what happens after 24 hours? It's tam lifgam. The taste becomes bad. So even if it comes out, which it is, that's the whole point. That's what we're putting into that. Well, it comes out. Now it's nice and tam by nice and tam lifgam. It's coming out, coming back in, and it's a bad taste. It doesn't do anything. That's why you have to wait 24 hours. That's why we make people wait 24 hours. It's in order so that you can do many kelim. Otherwise, you need shishim. Also, you don't know how fast it comes in and out. Right? There's actually an opinion that says, I believe it's the Rush that says you have to leave it in there as long as for all the blias to come out. Leave it in for the blias to come out. And then how long does it come out? Nobody knows. So when does it come out? So one sheet is no, you put it out. That's the fast it comes in and comes out.
If you have 20.
Yes. Okay, so we'll talk about how to do it. Talk about how to do it when you don't have the time. Or, for example, today they had a huge in Kew Garden Hills. They had a huge Hagalas Kelim center. You can come and do Hagala, right? Now I don't know if everyone waited 24 hours. I don't know if you waited 24 hours. I don't know if you waited 24 hours. You have some guys that say, the rabbi's in the 24 hours. I'm just going to do Hagala. All right? It's a real concern. So what do you do? Well, let's deal with that. That's next. Okay. We didn't, this is Kashering Kelim is so, it's complex. Chamavati writes that, you have Kashering Kelim, Ravitzi guys writes in the Yalkut Yosef, you should have a mashgiach at the Hagalas Kelim Center. You shouldn't do it alone at home. You don't know all the halachas because you might mess up. Shulchan Aruch writes, this is now in your Deo, not in Hilchos Hechsher Kelim. It's a different halach. It's here. But he writes over here about Noisem Tam Lifgam. Okay, so he writes, Shimnotznu efer b'mayim chamin shebayora koydem shenicha kedaris b'toicha afal pi shashum and dovik behen mutar. The idea offer who Noisem Tam Lifgam. Okay, so this is the Shulchan Aruch's eitzah. Shulchan Aruch says, throw in a bad tasting substance into the pot? He says ashes. His idea is ashes. Okay. Yeah, I guess he didn't have too many other bad tasting substances. So he said, put in ashes. Ashes will now create something bad taste. So when the chametz comes out, it's going to mix with the bad taste. And then when it comes back in, it's going to be bad taste. And bad tasting blias doesn't do anything. You're a day in 95. Okay. The Shach says, now the Shach is very nispal by this. He says, I don't find this anywhere. This is not from anywhere. Where did Shulchan Aruch get this? Even in the Beit Yosef of Yosef Karo, he didn't mention this. All of a sudden, the Shulchan Aruch, he comes up with a new idea of putting in ashes. And he says, it seems from the word of Pesach, there's no way to perform a galon utensil that is a ben yomo unless if you didn't wait a day, you need 60 against the pot in the water. There's no such thing of ashes. Okay. Comes the Chazon Ish, and the Chazon Ish says that there's a difference with ashes. The Shach's issue with the Shulchan Aruch is ashes. He says if one would place a bitter substance into the water to the point where they are foul and were inedible by humans, the gullah for the utensil is valid. So he wants to say that ashes is not that bad of a taste. So therefore the Shach was very against it because ashes is not that bad. It doesn't really make like right, exactly. Tisha, people put ashes on their eggs. Not the worst thing. Doesn't make it bitter. But he says if you make something that's really bitter, then it's okay. Now there are those who argue with this. So what exactly is bitter? So some people have an issue if you're putting in soap. If I want to put soap, you don't need soap. But soap changes also the consistency of the water. Make it thicker, make it slippier, and that might be an issue. So what people do, and Rav Elyashiv was asked and he was matu this, was bleach. To put in bleach into the water. Bleach apparently doesn't change the consistency of water, and it makes it very bitter. And so the blias that come out mixes with the bleach, and now whatever comes back in is already nice and tam lifgam. It's already a bad taste, and it's okay. So most Haggalah centers, that's what they do, because we don't know if everyone comes and waited 24 hours. There's chash, there are more people who are not so familiar with halacha, or people who are not so, makbid with halacha. They just want to get their Haggalah done. They go to the Haggalah center, and we have to be cautious for that. So you have to put in bleach. You have to put enough that it makes the taste bitter. The water becomes bitter. To that sense that when the blias, the flavors come out, it'll become bitter. So it'll become lefkam. So if you're doing a gullah at home and you waited 24 hours, you don't have to put in bleach. It's actually probably better not to put in bleach. Because the Shach and others have said these things don't really work. But if you're doing it in a Haggalah center, then it's probably preferable to put in bleach, because you might have people who come with actual chametz, and you don't have shishim against all those pots, and they're going to go back in. Then you're going to have to put in the bleach. So this is Merechai's question. Merechai's question is, I don't have time to wait 24 hours, right? The Zman of Isser Chametz is coming, and I need to kasher my Kelim, and I'm late. So what do I do? So it says here in the Halacha Brura of Rabbi David Yosef Shlita, he writes, it's also permitted to perform Haggalah by using bad tasting water. He says, such as by placing soap, bleach, or the like into the water. So you see, he's not worried about soap either. So you can use soap too. This also be done in order to kasher utensil for meat use, dairy, and vice versa within the last 24 hours. So remember the whole issue of doing it within the 24 hours. He says you can do it, you make it nice and tam, lefkam. Put in bleach in there. Now you can put in meat and kasher dairy and kasher meat and kasher everything in the same Haggalah because it's lefkam now.
What page is it?
In the Halacha Brura?
Yeah.
You have this one?
Yeah.
Okay, so on page 62.
Thank
Page
you.
62, halacha 27. Okay, so he says you can put in that. So again, recommended thing is if you're doing it at home and you know everything's 24 hours, don't put anything in. Because that's the legit way of doing Hagala without any other things. Any 24 hours, you have no issue. If you're in a place, if you're short for time, or you're in a place where a lot of people are doing it, and you don't know if they waited 24 hours, then go ahead and put in the bleach, preferably than soap, I would say, because soap changes consistency. There are those who argue about soap, so we want to stay away from that. Machloket, bleach seems to be more accepted by everyone, so you can put in the bleach. Okay, now, what happened? Yeah. Can you kasher plastic? Okay, we're gonna get into that. We're almost there. We're almost there. I hope we have. Oh, we're already running out of time. Okay, so let's just finish up the Hagala process, and then we'll go through the different Kelim. Okay, the actual Hagala process is you have to have the water. What water can be used? It has to be boiling water with bubbles on it. It has to be rolling bubbles. Okay, it does not necessarily have to be on the fire to do Hagala. Okay, you can take it off the fire, but it needs to have rolling boils on it. The only way you're gonna have the rolling boils is if you keep it on the fire. Okay, but if you're able to take it off the fire and still have the rolling boils, it's still okay. But you need to boil it till it bubbles, and then you can start putting things inside. That's the process. That's considered yad soledidbo. And this is the way that it is done. It could be any pot. It could be a chametz pot. It's better, preferably, if it is a chametz pot that's cleaned, that's not used. You use that pot. You use that pot, throw on the fire. So what I do is I take my biggest chametz pot that I have and I turn it on. And that's what I do. The hagal tzricha roitchin shma'ala reticha. You need bubbling boils. So he brings down here, I don't have the exact source, but he brings down here that if you're going to do it in a Pesach pot, so if you didn't put in the tam lifgam, right, you didn't put in the bleach or something like that, you might have chametz coming out of it. If you didn't wait the 24 hours, right, you're going to make your Pesach pot now issue. You're going to have to kasher that Pesach pot afterwards. If you use a chametz pot, you don't have any of these issues. Okay.
Chametz pot that wasn't used for 24 hours.
So if you have it within 24 hours, so maybe you want to put a little bleach in it. You have to see. Let's just go through. You need the water should be bubbling. You can also use an electric water kettle. Okay, so if you want there online on YouTube, Rabbi Shai Tahan has a video. Shai Tahan has a video of how he kashes his kitchen. All right, and he shows he takes an electric water kettle, he fills it up, it boils, and then he takes them, he pours on his counters, and it's easier to pour with the electric water kettle, your counter, than the way I used to do it with the big, after I have kashered all my Kelim, then I would take this big pot and everything flies everywhere, and my toes get burned and everything happens, it's easier probably if you have an electric water kettle that you're able to control better. Okay, so then that's an easier way of doing it, and that's fine. The heat source is immaterial where the heat's coming from, as long as it's a rolling boil, that's what you need. That's what you need for Hagala. Now, if you have Kelim that are too big, how do you do Hagala then? So this is the difference between Hagala and Tfilas Kelim. It comes to Hagala, if I can't fit the whole thing in, you do one half, turn it around and do the other half. When it comes to Tfilas Kelim, you cannot do that. Tfilas Kelim has to be entirely inside in one shot for the mikvah. Okay, so just make that distinction. We compare a lot of times Tfilas Kelim to extra Kelim, but it's not when it comes to this. Hagala could be done in parts, half and half. It's too big. But Tfilas Kelim has to be done. Mikvah Kelim has to be done in one shot. It has to be all in one shot. So just for a second, because we talked about Mikvah Kelim, Tfilas Kelim, the recommended procedure, if you don't have the basket or something like that, you have to use your hands. Recommended procedure is you take it in your hand. First, you wet your hands first. Take the keli, put it in your hand, and then while you're underneath, pass it from one hand to the other. Because if you're holding it, right, then it doesn't go on those spots. But if you pass it quickly, usually you let go for a second, and then it should be able to go everywhere. You should hold it lightly. Your hand should be wet beforehand. Preferably with the mikvah water, you make it wet. Take it and you move it underneath like that, and that's usually okay. If you have the basket or something like that, it's usually easier. You can just put it all in and it comes back out. Okay. Okay, now what happens if you have such a pot that you can't put in half and half? It's still too big, so you can do hagala to the own keli, right? If you fill it up with water, tall enough, and you all the water to the top, boiling boil. You then take a stone, you make it very hot, you throw the hot stone inside, and then all the water spills on the sides. V'zehu, and this big pot becomes kasher. You have to kasher the handles of the pot also. All that has to go inside the hagala. Okay, so not just the part, the handles, everything that is part of the pot has to get kasher. How long it has to be inside? So I told you that there was an opinion. I'll read it to you over here. There's an opinion that says as follows. The Rif, who states the utensil must be left in the boiling water until all the blias come out. The Torah says, how long is that? No one knows how long it takes to come out. Right? You must leave it in the water for the amount of time it was used, because the hagala would seem sometimes take many days. Rather, you must assume that Chazal knew that the blias come out right away. Right? Kabbalah kachpolto. It was used all this way for these many days. You have to use it in, leave it in for that. But no, that's not the way it works. It comes out right away. Now, that's what what does the Ben Ish Chai say? Ben Ish Chai says, Tov l'ashhot me'at et ha'keli b'toch harotkin. It's good to leave it there a little bit. Today she chanes harotkin l'toch oivei ha'keli. They should come into the keli, which they get see like hagiul l'chutz. But dafka she'eh mu'etet yisheh otam aval lo yisheh harbe. You shouldn't leave it there for a long time. You should leave it there for a short amount of time. What do we do afterwards? The minhag is to put it into cold water right after. All right, Tosafot says, I have no idea why it's done. People are just doing it. Maybe it's because it's something to do with something in the Mikdash. Rashi wants to say, because we're worried that if it's hot, it can reabsorb chametz at that time because it's still hot. So that's why you want to cool it down right away. So that's what we do, and that's what Shulchan Aruch says. Noyagim v'shtof hakeli b'mayim karim achar hagala miyad. We put it in right away. The Yalkut Yosef in the Pesach edition on page 170, halacha 47 says, what about if someone is doing, page 170, halacha, let's say 47, okay? If you're doing hagala on glass, now we really don't have to do hagala on glass. We Sfaradim whole glass can just be washed and it's good to go. But if you had a minhag that glass does need hagala, so then if you kasher glass through hagala, don't put it in cold water right after, he said. Why? Since the utensil would likely explode on contact with cold water, right? If you have glass and you put it in hot, and then right away you go and you put it in cold, you're gonna break the glass. So then you don't have to, because the whole thing of putting it in cold water right after is a minhag. Nahagu, this is what we do. But if it's going to break the item, we don't have to do that. Now we don't have to kasher glass through hagala. We don't. We just need to wash it.
Sometimes it's hard to say. Sometimes it's very hot.
Right.
It can warp.
It can get ruined. Okay. So now that we're up to some kelim, now we're going to talk about different kelim, different parts of the kitchen. I think now that we got all the yesodot, we got all the concepts, we have 3 minutes for the kelim. So, you can't kasher earthenware. Anything that's a ticheres, china, pottery, you can't kasher them. Put them away. Okay. Even if you didn't use them for a whole year, it's still, there's a shita that says that if you didn't use ticheres for 12 months, it becomes kosher. You can use it. No, we don't hold to that. It has to be put away. You can't use it. Can plastic be kashered? Machloket poskim. Moshe Feinstein says plastic cannot be kashered. There are others who disagree. It seems that Chamuvadia said plastic could be kashered, but that means the plastic has to be able to withstand the hagala. Okay, the plastic cannot withstand the hagala, then it cannot be kasher. Okay, but if it could stand it, if it could withstand the hagala, then it could.
Usually you're doing with the sharp side.
No.
The handle side, you usually not. I mean, I've done that.
Usually we just throw the knives into the hagala thing and that's it. The whole knife. The plastic handles, I put it in, it lasts. It doesn't get ruined.
According to what I said that you cannot do it. Can I? But here, agree to me that I can do it.
Oh, the knife part. I don't know. I don't know. Because it seems to be when it comes to that keli, you have to kasher the whole keli, including the handle. So if the handle has to be kasher and you can't kasher it, then it shouldn't be able to. You would have to use a different handle. Okay, kashering the countertop. According to the Shulchan Aruch, we can kasher the countertop if it's marble, if it's granite, if it's quartz, if it's wood, we can kasher it with irui. Okay, so after you finish your agala, you take the pot of the hot water, or you can use an electric kettle, and you have to be very careful when you're doing the countertop. You have to get every surface of the countertop has to get in contact with the hot water. Not that you spill it in one spot and it goes down everywhere. That's not the way you do agala on a countertop. The hot water has to go in every spot. Okay, and the same thing. Yes, if you can't kasher something, you wash it down and cover it. It's probably easier to just wash it down and cover it. This way you save yourself a lot of hassle. Sink also has to be kashered. Shulchan says you can kasher. Plastic Kamabadi says you can kasher plastic. No, I said you can kasher plastic. But Moshe's lashon is, I don't know what these new materials are. They can't be kasher. That's what he says. That's his lashon in English Moshe. Sink.
Metal.
So there's an issue with the sink. Do you really have to kasher the sink or not? Why would be that issue? Turn to page 168. Halacha 42. He says a kitchen sink in which one washes dishes and pats has to be done through hagala. Even if it's an earthenware porcelain, you have to pour onto it. Now, here in the footnotes, the question is, the reason why it's sufficient because the sink is generally used with water that is less than yatzoleded bo. If rov tashmisho, majority use of the sink is not with yatzoleded bo, you're using less than yat, you're not using such hot water. So you should just be able to wash your sink with cold water or whatever, just wash it down. You don't even do hagal on it. So why are you saying do hagal on it? Rov tashmisho, back to all the way to the beginning. So if you take a look at the second part of the note, right before note 77, he brings from Rabbi Tzion Abba Shaul in the Or L'Tzion that a sink is not like a table, and although the custom is to purge the table, it is unnecessary to purge the sink. You do not have to do hagal on the sink, according to Rabbi Tzion Abba Shaul. All you have to do is to wash it thoroughly, and you're done. However,
Especially the vertical sides.
to kasher.
How do you get the water on?
You have to get it directly on it somehow. I know. You do it and you hope for the best.
The way you do it, the sink and then put a brick or something.
Yeah, because then you're doing. That's the same idea when you have the big pot. You're throwing in the hot stone.
Fill up the whole thing of the sink. How you gonna
It's
fill it up?
not child. It's not child. So the Moran Rishon Tzion says, although you're right, Rov Tashmisha means you just have to wash it down. He's chayshish like those poskim who say you should use hagala. So it seems to be Chamovadia. He says because there are poskim. That's what he writes here. Because there are poskim who are chayshish for the sink. This would be the Ashkenazic poskim who say we have to be careful for the miyut tashmishoy, how it's sometimes used. So for some reason, Chamovadia felt that in the sink we should also be chayshish for miyut, for the minority usage of it, and therefore we should kasher it. But it seems to be something that we're doing extra and not really necessary. So maybe that's why people are not so very, I'll do the best I can, and I'll be Saimich and the Rov Tashmisho and Ben Tzion Abba Shaul that you really don't have to kasher the sink that much. I think that's what most people do. Anyway, that was the topic of Hechsher Kelim. I think it was an amazing topic. A lot of flying pieces, moving pieces at the same time. If anyone has any specific questions of certain items, how to kasher them, you can feel free to reach out to me. And if I know, I'll be able to answer you. If not, I'll be able to direct you in the right direction. And with that, I wish everybody Shavua Tov and Chag Kosher V'Smeach. Bez Hashem, next week, you should be able to do another shiur on Pesach. Probably do the shiur on B'dikot and Biur Chametz. Bez Hashem, next week. Bli neder. Okay. Toda rabba, Shavua tov.
Thank you.
Thank you.